We're reading and studying an article by Robert Crosby, and it's it was intended originally. Let's see, the language of the soul, and that's where it can be found on Universal Theosophy. So the big question, Crosby starts off the article, where is the real man? And autumn and the changing of the leaves here is so beautiful. And I made that my theme because, in a way, our soul is like the essence of those leaves, going through their changes. And it's really a spectacle that's so beautiful to behold. So, where is the real man? The soul is pictured in the ancient teachings as the real self in man. From the Christian teachings, we are led to believe that man has a soul and may save it or lose it. That's the idea generally being held in the West. But the conception of the ancients and that of theosophy is a representation of this eternal idea. It's different. And let's look at how it's different. Soul is, in fact, the one who perceives. It is vision itself, pure and simple, unmodified, not subject to change. And it looks directly on ideas. Theosophy teaches we are souls. We don't have souls. We are souls. So let's talk a little bit more about the real man. Crosby says the real man, in whatever condition he may be existing, whether asleep or awake, whether in a physical body during his lifetime, or whether in another form of body after death, or before birth, or before the existence of this planet or the solar system, this real man was the same perceiver then as now, the same soul all the time, the creator of all the conditions that have arisen. Man is the intelligent creator of this universe in connection with all the beings below him and all the beings above him. Man thus forms part of one great brotherhood, and this bond of brotherhood extends throughout from the lowest being to the very highest. You like that? All are souls. Even the very lowest forms of matter are nonetheless souls, for in the lowest form of matter is the power to perceive, the power to act, the power to gain experience. The potentiality is the same in all, and that potentiality becomes a potency, ever expanding as the soul increases its range of experience. All the forms, the bodies that compose the universe are the results of the experience and action of the souls inhabiting them. They are all the instruments of the soul, and we must always act with others in any grade or class of beings. There is that unity of action which produces a similarity of instrument. In these similarities of instrument, we play upon and are played upon by beings of the same class in the fullest degree, and by lower and higher classes in a greater or lesser degree. The self in theosophy is the same in each being, no matter how great that being may be, nor how low. We get another idea in regard to the soul, that the soul also represents the acquired experience gained through evolution by each and every class of being. That's food for thought. Another idea in regard to the soul, besides representing the acquired experience gained through evolution by each and every class of being, each individual being is not only self, but in addition, the acquired experience gained through contact with all other beings. Realizing that there are individual souls, we can see that the only differences between souls are in their degrees of acquired experience. Taking the soul from this point of view, then, as the acquired experience of individuals, when we speak of God or the Oversoul, the universal Oversoul, we simply mean the acquired experiences or the wisdom of every soul and all souls. The self is wisdom itself. That would be the meaning of the sentence in the Bhagavad Gita, that the self is wisdom itself, the object of wisdom, and that which is to be attained by wisdom. Full consciousness of the union of all souls, or spiritual identity. Supposing there is a real language of the soul, what would it be capable of expressing? Undoubtedly, every experience through which it had been. Theosophy teaches the doctrine of reincarnation, of successive lives, both on this earth and in other states of substance and consciousness. Continuity of consciousness or spirit is preserved through all these states and environments, and the record of all that occurred in all these lives is present at all times in anyone. Life in manifestation, because the self, the spirit, is present. The language of the soul would be capable of expressing all that we ever experienced. In those past lives, we have undoubtedly spoken different languages from those we now speak. In those personal existences, we used languages now altogether deserted and forgotten by us as persons. But the memory of those languages must be there if we are a continuing self, and preserve the continuity of experience gained, as well as the continuity of consciousness. Where is that recorded? It is impacted in the imperishable part of man's nature. It cannot be any spoken tongue whatever. Theosophy points out that matter is in 7 states or degrees of substances, and each of these with 7 substates, the whole ranging from the very finest, most plastic and enduring state down to the very coarsest, what we may call the material plane or matter, as it is known and suspected by us, with its many differing gradations and combinations. Man as the highest and most evolved being concerned in the evolution of this solar system, is clothed in all these 7 states of substance derived from the original primordial substance, the homogeneous matter from which every form is evolved. These degrees of substance are indicated in the 7 colors of the spectrum. They are also pointed to in the 7 notes of the scale of music. The notes and colors are not exactly what we think they are. They represent the 7 great distinct states of matter. Sound itself, or light itself, represents the homogeneous state from which the 7 notes and the 7 prismatic colors are derived. Our colors and our musical notes are only replicas of these. They're reflections or correspondences in this one state of matter and sound with which we are acquainted. We know there are 7 colors. We know that there are other octaves of color beyond those, which our eyes are unable to transmit to us, some so high, some so low, that our eyes will not register their vibrations. The same is true with sound. We are able to detect several, but there are degrees of sound beyond the highest we are able to detect, and also sounds too low for us to hear. This is why it was said in old times, as mentioned in the Bible, that the wise understood every man speaking in his own tongue, although many different languages were used than is now. It was because these wise men could read back of the spoken language that they knew the very thoughts, feelings, and natures of the speakers. All this we shall find out if we move along the path shown, for it is not an uncharted path. Remember, others have been along that path before us. They are our elder brothers, Jesus, for example, Buddha for another, and all those who came at different times as saviors to the many different peoples. So these frequencies, vibrations, the colors, the sounds, this is why any person's motion, even so simple an action as moving from one chair to another, quality of the thought, the very nature of the person is clearly shown by the assemblage of colors and shades of colors produced by the action. The same with any uttered sounds or speech. No matter what, the centers in the body are set in motion, each having its own particular telltale colors and rates of vibration. Strange as it may seem to us, colors may be heard, sounds may be seen, and forms may be experienced, because all are merely different rates of vibration, the motion of intelligent consciousness or spirit. The brain, here we go. So in our thoughts, we have a great combination of colors and sounds, constantly changing their form or appearance. Our brain is the finest material instrument we use. It, like everything else we use, is in evolution. It is the organ of thought on this plane of substance where we are now acting. If we think high and noble thoughts, then our brains become very susceptible to that kind of use. Every kind of thought has its own particular rate and range of vibration, its own particular colors. If our brains are trained to high thoughts while we are awake, if we try to understand what we really are while occupying this physical instrument, what this body of ours represents, what it is capable of, then gradually the brain will begin to respond to something of our higher knowledge. It will carry forward and transmit more and more of the language of the soul, of all the garnered experiences of the past. Now, most of our mental activity is applied solely to the things of this life, to things of the body. So mankind is continually moving along a false path. No being, however high, can prevent this because each man is soul, is spirit, is consciousness, is of the highest, however he use and apply his powers. Theosophy endeavors to present to man what his real nature is, that he is first, last, and all the time spirit. Spirit means life and consciousness, the power to see, to know, to experience. We all have that. For it is not an uncharted path. Remember, others have been along that path before us. They are our elder brothers. Jesus, for example, Buddha for another, and all those who came at different times as saviors to the many different peoples. They had all acquired the language of the soul. Now, the language of the soul can be acquired only when the being realizes that his duty is not to himself, but to the highest interests of his fellow men, not to save his own soul, but to lead as many of his neighbors as he possibly can in the direction of the truth, desiring nothing for himself. We keep the doors closed of our own will. In ignorance? Yes. But who remains ignorant? Those only who will not hear, those only who doubt the language of the soul. Okay. There you go. John, are you emceeing? Or do you want me to MC? Oh, so, Judy, you have a thought? Thank you. Or a response?
Question? Yes, I have a thought after this morning. I've been thinking a lot about thought. Thank you for a beautiful presentation. I know the East Coast has a much more spectacular change of season than we have in the West, but we have one that's very subtle, if you notice. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned some of the great teachers of humanity, Jesus, the Buddha, there were others, Zoroaster, for example. But it seems to be there's something very important that Jesus said, someone who knows the language of the soul. He said, don't blaspheme against the Holy Spirit. And I know that that sounds terribly strong in language, but I think he is meaning don't deny your own soul, because that will lead to a disaster, materialism, no sense of morality, no sense of direction. And I've seen it happen, especially in philosophy departments. So I wondered if you could comment on that, that because we have been through so many experiences and we have these elder brothers, and they may speak in very cryptic language, but that is what they're getting at ultimately, is that we are souls, not just bodies carrying around a little poof that's going to go somewhere after we pass. As you think that is the case?
Yeah, I think the point that Crosby's trying to make in the teachings is that where we park our consciousness, is where we're going to be. It makes a difference. And a lot of people probably haven't given it much serious thought. And on top of that, even when we try to stay the course, life happens and we get distracted. We get into a disconnect, and so a lot of the day is reconnecting, to that self. I see. Maybe is this about the same question or a different question, Maurice and Jenny?
It's a slightly different question.
Oh, okay.
The question is the distinction that Theosophy makes, I think, very strongly between the spirit and the soul. And I'm not sure there was, even in this article, that both were mentioned, but somehow I get it sort of mixed a lot. Obviously, maybe it is all attached, it's all integrated, but if you could say a few more words about that, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. So differentiating between soul and spirit. We have that wonderful diagram of the triangle and the square, representing our septenary nature. And the upper triangle, is our connection to our everlasting self, if you'd like to call it that. And it is uplifting. It even looks like, it's ready to take off, right? The triangle form facing upwards. So and that is what continues. That is what continues. So there are I like to think of different parts of the car. I think of different analogies, the computer that we use for our being. We have our lower nature. I mean, most of us, are present in our physical bodies. And then there may be an event where we don't want to be in our physical bodies, or we're not enjoying them, or whatever it is. But then we start to question, at those times, who we really are, especially if it's a situation that requires courage, when we need to draw on more than just our being. And, in terms of the article, I think Crosby was emphasizing in such a beautiful way the point that we're the sum total of our experiences, but we also travel in groups. This is a traveling group here, right? And that comes together. It's a sangha, if you will, and there's a similarity of function there. So, we are more than what we perceive we are, visibly. There's a whole unseen part of our nature, but it's this septenary constitution is like a gearbox. When you're riding a bicycle or driving a car, you switch the gears in the transmission of your being. And when you realize that you're a composite being, you can decide, am I going to go fast? Am I going to go slow? I'm going to resonate to this or that, or I'm going to respond to different situations. And we do this all the time where, without thinking, we cross the street and we remember to watch for the light, and we might be carrying conversation, hopefully not on our cell phone as we cross the street, but we're consciously crossing the street, and we're going places. But all of that is based on a lot of past experience driving us forward, and we're picking up new experiences. But when we connect the way that it was suggested, if we develop that ability to speak the language of the soul that he was referring to, that the great teachers do, we access much more than just our wisdom. We can actually connect to the spirit which is the reservoir for all the experiences. So accessing that wisdom, we've probably all had times where we've had an insight, answers have come up to us, dreams have spoken to us, etc., in our experiences, and they are more profound. And I have a feeling that Jim Tepfer has got a profound question too.
Thank you.
Its profundity is quite questionable, but it is nonetheless a question. Would you consider, Helena, a voice of conscience in some sense, the language of the soul, some aspect of the language of the soul?
Okay, I think we heard the question. Is conscience part of the language of the soul? I would say yes. Those experiences that we've had in the past, they, depending upon where we park ourselves, also reflect our soul wisdom, which comes back as okay, all these prior experiences, we're evolving into actions that are raise us to higher planes of consciousness. But the thing with conscience or with our instruments is we have to be aware of the filters. And sometimes what we think is conscience is not. And we might not notice that we actually are stating an opinion, based on our vehicle, our prisms, our ability to see. And we all have that. And the brain does an interesting thing. It remembers the experiences, but in a sense, no experience is exactly like another experience, but they're similar. And so we reach into the basket of past experiences, and we may, if we're healthy, if our brains are working right, if the right circumstances align themselves, our GPS might be working pretty well. But at other times, our prisms may be short-sighted, and we all go through this. We're born, we're children, there's a developmental stage that we go through. Our past lives come through, and our appetites, our hobbies, our habits, our relationships, and how we respond to them. But we also, at times, have pick up different vibrations, and our brain compensates, and it can overgeneralize. So we have to be careful of our. I was talking to Jean about this earlier. Is our prisms also need to be exercised and checked. There has to be a system where we check ourselves, because we might lapse into certain conditions where our cognitive constructs are too general, or they might be short-sighted, they might be nearsighted, but regardless, because of the law of karma, we're going to have consequences to those actions. So the point being, we want to sow the seeds of vibrations that we attach to our behavior, our thoughts. We want to monitor them on some level, because the discipline, forming a habit, things just go more smoothly, with repetition. But we also have to be careful because it could work the other way. Our repetition of may actually be colored. We might be engaging in microaggressions that we're not even aware of because we have certain baskets of experience, and they might be coloring us in ways that it's deceptive. So there are a lot of different planes, but we can, it's uphill. It's uphill. Blavatsky quotes Christina Rossetti, in her poetry, and the question of is it downhill all the way? No, we could take it up, but we might have some resistance, and that's okay. That's experience. That's gaining experience. Smooth seas don't make skillful sailors. So I think in the long run, when we have the long perspective of karma and reincarnation, we see the wisdom, of the spirit in the evolutionary process taking us along. When we take the small picture, it can be confusing. But if we look at the bigger picture, of a lifetime's worth of experience of all the transformations of relationships of ourselves and all the experiences. It's really quite magnificent. Alan, you have your hand up?
Yeah. So relative to conscious, so once you've made a firm commitment to be altruistic and to help others, would then, if that is established and is absolutely firm within your nature, can you then, in a sense, put that aside? And then is wisdom what you need at that point? Because knowing what the right thing to do, knowing when you see someone in pain, when that is productive and when it is harmful and so on. So is conscious something that is that there just to get you to the point where you make that absolute commitment? And once you have made that absolute commitment to be altruistic, is then it just a matter of wisdom from that point?
Okay, I think we all heard the question, and you're all going to help me answer it. So don't be shy. I have some thoughts on it, but anybody else have a thought, about Alan's question? Once you make the commitment, then is it just up to following the wisdom after that?
Gandhi, going back also relating it to your answer, Gandhi, I think, would agree with what you were saying, because he mentioned there's too many people that keep talking about conscience, and they don't seem to grasp the fact that conscience is not so simple, and it's not opinion. It's something that's got to do with moral training before you're in a position to really distinguish between the voice of conscience and other subtle forms of self-deception. Your own, as you mentioned, your particular habits, your particular likes and dislikes. You need some kind of self-knowledge, basically, to begin to hear what should be called the still small voice of conscience. And to the degree to which someone begins to have that kind of inner clarity and moral clarity, then, according to Gandhi, you're in a position to then understand that there are times when transcending reason and intuition at times is a voice of conscience. That's a kind of communication between the higher and the lower. And it's usually negative. Don't do this, don't do that, whatever. Don't say this, don't say that. But nonetheless, it does have its place. you would think, in the language of the soul. And wisdom is the process of actually the training of the mind and the heart, is the beginning of the waking up of wisdom. And it comes, as you say, by beginning with a vow. What distinguishes an academic or someone who's engaged in researching a philosophy and someone who's committed to it different?
Thank you. I was also thinking, that part of the article, that talks about the death states. There's a lot of that going on these days, and or I was thinking about how at times conscience and duty, especially in terms of duty, how they interact, so that you can have someone who is transitioning, or they're in their after death states, and so how do we interact with them? How do we interact with the people who are approaching death? Because it takes a lifetime of actions and practice that can impact and will impact all the states, the consecutive states, Kamaloka Devachan, and our future incarnations, and we're not always mindful of it, and then some people aren't aware, so we're all going to face death. That's a given, and we're going to face birth again, but it's an amazing process, this transitioning. And when you work with people who are losing their memory, your parents, your close friends, who are sick, and they're facing their karma, and getting feisty and not being too kind to you, being frustrated because they're fighting, to hold on to their brain, when sometimes this valve or that valve, may or may not working. Do we, how do we respond to frustrating situations where, we have a duty, in taking care of our parents and our children, but it's painful. The application, as Jim said, it's not that easy. The times where we use our conscience, some of them are on automatic pilot. We do that. We take care of our families and et cetera. We have those routines, but we also have real challenges. We have real challenges. Carolyn?
Yeah. In response to Alan's question, it seems that if we have already lived thousands of lives, or maybe only hundreds of lives, we have accumulated a great deal of karma, and we move into new situations. We encounter people we've not really interacted with, that we, at best, we can hope that we establish some stability and maybe reap the rewards of that stability and rightful living. But it seems inevitable that we're going to encounter new challenges, new unresolved relationships or whatever. So it does, and hopefully we strengthen our commitment so it's a little easier to confront new situations. So I wouldn't expect, however strong our commitment is in this time and this life, that we're free forever. It's just it's just a constant challenge, and so that's part of what we we can expect, seems to me.
Ellen, you have a response to that?
Well, it's just another question. A Jesus or a Buddha, an enlightened being of that nature, do you think that they ever had a sense of do you think they ever faltered and said that? First of all, I guess the two questions: were they so wise that they always were doing the right thing, or and then beyond that, did they ever have a sense that do you think that they ever stumbled and were lax in their in performing an optimum duty? And I'm thinking that someone we'd know more about, say a Gandhi, just an incredible human being. Do we have a sense of any failings on his part? So I guess the question is, are these more enlightened people, is conscience the same sort of thing? Are they still using it, or are they beyond that?
That's an interesting question, Alan. I like to read the stories of the lives of these people. There's our heroes, and inevitably, when you read their stories, at times Gandhi was pissed. Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane. He felt forsaken on the cross. I mean, there were moments, and you watched them exactly encounter terrible problems. In the Gita, betrayal by your own family. Basically for money and power. Some of these themes recur, and these individuals are born and they live their life in such a way, in such a remarkable way, because they prove out these principles. They bring information, the truth, to people, and sometimes there are pretty horrendous consequences for trying to bring the truth. I mean, it's getting mocked. It's really getting all beat up today, that word. But it's not the first time, and it won't be the last. But I think that it's when they encounter, when they take on these missions, when they take on the work, then that also has repercussions for them that are pretty serious, pretty challenging, and pretty unique, you might say, in a way. But the way they respond, they rise to the challenges, I think is the point that I want to make, and we can do the same. We can learn from their stories and remind ourselves when we're confronted with a problem that feels like it's the end of the world, or a situation that we really, 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 don't want to have to deal with. We can choose to respond differently. We could just say, why don't I do my taxes joyfully? Why don't I, be kinder, to, my mother, not just to the homeless people on the street? I mean, maybe I need to study and learn what somebody's about, so that I can come from the right place, and use discernment, another part of wisdom, to be of help, to people who are suffering. I see Judy's got her hand up, and Jonathan too.
Oh, Judy's before us, and it's actually going to be Ken when you're ready to take that hand. But yeah, Judy.
Okay. Judy goes first.
I'll just be very brief. It seems that Jesus and the Buddha were both 5th and 6th rounds respectively in their consciousness. So perhaps they had problems on those levels that we can't comprehend, but they took on our level of problems and showed us, in a sense, how to work through them. But it seems to be able to understand our life morally, that the injunction of the great master Pythagoras is so important that you review every act of the day 3 times. And I told this to a colleague, and she said, "Oh, I just beat myself up if I did that." And I said, "You don't need to beat yourself up. Just say, I could have done better. I could have given a different answer to that student, or I could have helped rescue that animal, or I could have not done something that I did." And there'll probably be another opportunity in an infinite amount of lives. I guess we're all going to get to be the king or the queen at some point, and we're going to have to deal with problems we can't imagine. So it seems that injunction is very important, and I confess I fall asleep on it all the time, but I try to do it. So thank you for everybody's comments.
Yeah, the unexamined life is not worth living. Is that how that phrase goes? Ken?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, I have an opinion about what Crosby seems to be stating in part of this article when he talks about the wise men and the adepts having this kind of like special ability to understand anybody's language when they're speaking a foreign language. I was wondering if that, my opinion is that maybe these adepts or these magi or whoever they are, or Jesus or the Buddha, have a turiya, state of consciousness, and they're really interacting with what to us seems to be another person speaking another language. They're interacting with them, as Judy seems to imply, from another level of reality, another level of that septenary nature. And that's why they have this seemingly magical ability to understand the thoughts and the words of someone speaking another language. So I'm wondering what you all think about that opinion, Helen or anybody else.
Well, I was just waiting to see if any hands went up, but while we're waiting, where Crosby also says that on some level, and the teachings tell us, we're doing that all the time. We're doing that all the time, in one form or another. There are different degrees of experience. So we have these bundles of habits and our character and our personality and our skandhas and our parents' skandhas. I mean, epigenetically, I think the most recent research showed that your genes can carry a vibration from a trauma that someone in your ancestry suffered up to 14 lifetimes ago. So we're not only dealing with our stuff, everybody's dealing with their baggage and luggage of their entire family. And then and other groups, right? And other groups. And we could use that group energy, if you will, the collective energy, at times can be helpful, and it could be harmful. Some people are overly sensitive. They wish they could turn off all the vibrations and frequencies that come at them, and need help with that. So and some people have karma, that that's occurring to them that you don't want to interfere. Knowing how to be the guide along the side, a friend, more than anything else, to help with that, making those deposits of frequencies, so that we can we take responsibility in theosophy for the lives that we create, and we're constantly co-creating our future. So the groups that we work with, the families that we incarnate with, the schools that we go to, the relationships that we engage in, I mean, our family is where, we're karmically destined to learn some of our biggest lessons. But, sometimes for some people, those past experiences might draw them to being a pianist or an artist, but we're all going to go through all these experiences, and we learn even from watching other people go through experiences, so we can avoid them, or get ideas from other people about how to do things better. But the I guess there's 2 points. One is we have to question our filters. That's examining ourselves, as Judy said, 3 times a day, and just taking a step back and watching the feedback, because we're giving out vibrations and we're taking in vibrations all the time, and we can attune ourselves, with practices, with meditation, with reading, just reading the voice of the silence, and sitting with it, being thoughtful over. I mean, I certainly felt as I was reviewing the article that there was a discipline that was involved that put me into another condition, another it was just like the leaves, and the beautiful pictures of the fall and the changing. I felt, we're all souls along this path, and it's wider than we can imagine, and then it's also, there's an intelligent evolution that's taking place. It's a dynamic process. So we can commit, but that commitment, how do we follow through with it? Because we do get distracted. No one is perfect, and we're all going to have our moments. But the point is, do we get back up on the horse? Do we get back into the chariot? Do we learn from them? Do we beat ourselves up? Do we beat other people up? There are so many variations on the theme, but we can all do better. We can do better.
Well, thanks, Helen.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a question, Helena.
Yeah, John.
Okay, I was wondering what the function of silence might be in relation to accessing the language of the soul. A wise person who had familiarity with Alcoholics Anonymous was saying one time that in some of the locations, not all, they have a practice of not even allowing a newer person to talk too much in the beginning. And then later, I guess when they get with the, with more of what's going on, then they're allowed to ask questions and participate and all that stuff. But the person explained to me that this is to kind of settle down all the habit, addictive, compulsive chit chat that just goes. And it occurs to me that we all have habit chit chat that we're all kind of addicted to. It comes from watching TV, it comes from just overstimulation, just all these habits, we get addicted to them. Is there some kind of way to access the silence to allow the compulsive brain to kind of settle down, knowing that there is this language of the soul?
Well, we hope so. The thing with meditation, is for some people, when they get into that quiet space, right, Jean, right, Ken, when they try to get quiet, they can't. You know, their body may have a physical inability, you know, to be able to get into a quiet place, and they literally might, you know, for them, having noise, you know, might put them into a meditative state, you know, jamming up the circuits so that they can override, you know, get help with overriding, you know, the chatter. You see that because that can happen, and it's hard, very, very hard, you know, when it comes to addictions, especially. A lot of the time, you know, there are allergies that, you know, there's a sensitivity that occurs neurologically. There's a hypervigilance. So they talk about the serenity, you know, in the program, but there's really a lot of mining, you know, that a lot of clarification, a lot of understanding ourselves and who we are, you know, who we really are. Whether we're a veteran, you know, returning from active duty, and you know, we have all those experiences that we bring with us, and what that does to us, or a traumatic childhood, you know, or we're all going to encounter these periods in our life where there's some suffering. You know, the question is, how does that shape us? You know, and what can we learn from those experiences? Because I don't think we're quite. I think we're better, but you know, in terms of addiction, I think, you know, it's really a gift that we've gotten to learn so much about addiction, but there's so much more. You know, it's almost as if, you know, we're scratching the surface and it's at the tip of the iceberg. You know, what our understanding about addiction is. I was thinking the other day that, you know, skandhas, you know, those bundles of behaviors that we bring with us. I mean, sometimes the addictions may have sources prenatally, postnatally, epigenetically, et cetera, et cetera. But we can make favorable deposits in our bank of skandhas and karma, you know, to alleviate that. I mean, it's sort of why we're born into the families that we're born into. You know, a lot of us have been shepherding students, or taking care of children, or you know, being of service, and you know, there's a lot of suffering. You know, you can get a shovel and dig it anywhere. You know, there's still plenty of it, you know, going on, and where to begin. But we can't exhaust ourselves in the process either. But you know, we can share what we've learned, and we can start to take care of our instruments better. You know, we can do some amazing things, but we're still up against you know, some formidable challenges, like collective challenges, like we're facing now. You know, some of them are you know, aggregate karma, you know, of collective groups of people, and you see the shadows just, you know, from groups of people from the past, from cultures, you know, from wars, from clans, from politics. I mean, you know, there's so many ways that karma reverberates, and we can have collective responses to them. And I think that's part of what the wisdom and the discernment is. But I think Jonathan is going to say something now.
Oh, well, I'm just trying to make it, Helena, so that if you want to, you can sign off now, just because of getting ready for your next marathon that you're
Okay.
So
Well, today I'm in San Diego
yeah.
tonight, and now I'm going to be in Hawaii.
Oh yeah, it really goes. So
I just gonna go.
gosh,
Thanks, John.
Helena, what a wonderful presentation.
Perfect.
And I really appreciate the calm, noetic way that you delivered the presentation. That to me is like an exemplification of actually speaking the language of the soul. So very, very wonderful. And I'm sure that we're all very, very grateful, at least I am. So thank you very much for that
Yeah.
transmission of wisdom.